Welcome back to America's Retirement Headquarters, home of the Retirement Guys Formula and America's Medicare Associates with Nolan Baker and Scott Kerschner. 419-794-3030 is the phone number. The website's arhq.com. Don't forget, if you missed the first half of the show, you want to catch up on previous editions of the show, all available via podcast on YouTube. Just search for America's Retirement Headquarters wherever you consume your media. All those previous episodes up there for you to enjoy at your leisure. Again, America's Retirement Headquarters is what you search for there. When was the last time that you checked the beneficiaries on all your financial accounts? Here's the story of a woman whose husband recently passed away. She wanted to get access to the 401k money from his job, and financial advisor John Paraguay, he picks it up from there on TikTok.
And she finds out she's not getting this $500,000 401k payout. Come to find out of sight, out of mind, he's forgot to change the beneficiary from his ex-wife to his present wife. And guess who's getting that 401k check? And she's got a better chance of seeing Elvis of getting his ex-wife to give her that 401k money.
Unfortunately, this isn't a completely uncommon story. Do you remind clients about this important chore? Have you guys actually seen things like this happen in your office?
We have. And in fact, we've created the beneficiary checklist that outlines 16 different topics to go through on making sure your beneficiaries are correct. And what I would say is that when we walk through this beneficiary checklist with folks, 90% of the time, we find beneficiary mistakes that are out there. And in fact, if you listen to that TikTok commercial and what they were talking about there, a husband got divorced, didn't change the beneficiary, got remarried, passed away, and his ex-wife is the beneficiary of the account. All kidding aside, I guess glad he's dead, because he probably would have been killed, had that situation not occurred and him still be here. But those are the type of blow-ups that can happen all the time. In fact, if you go on Google and you type in the pension pickle, you can read a very similar story about a teacher who had saved and accumulated her life savings and then passed away, and her sister got the money, not her husband, because when she set it up years ago, her sister was listed as the beneficiary. Folks, this is an area that you do not get a do-over. You get one shot at getting this right. In fact, we had a meeting. We do a team meeting every week, and we discuss, our team approach, and we were working on some case designs. And unfortunately, dealing with retirees, we have clients that pass away. And, one of the biggest honors that I have is helping the family transition through that process. Allowing them to come in and sit down with us and say, this is why we did the beneficiary checklist. This is why we did the estate planning documents. This is why we went through the task of getting everything right, working hand in hand in that team approach with your estate planning professional and making sure that your wishes are carried out exactly the way that you want. But we ran into this situation where Chaz was talking in our team review of a case, and the daughter had come in and requested a withdrawal out of the account to pay some bills for mom who had recently passed away. It's not physically possible. After mom had passed away, there's nothing that can be done in that situation. In fact, you could even have a situation where you have maybe a husband and wife, and maybe the overwhelming lion's share of the money is in one of the spouse's name. Maybe it's, the husband, because he had it in his retirement account and he worked all those years. Well, when he passes away, there's still a process, even if there is a properly named beneficiary being the wife, there's still a time process that has to take place to get those assets transferred over, from the one spouse to the other spouse. So making sure that you address things like the liquidity and making sure that you have things set aside and there and available for you. We also think about the things like, my beneficiary's probably already on file. I'm sure I set that up correctly. Well, have you ever upgraded a computer from an old computer to a new computer and needed to find something that was new? I mean, I recently did that with my computer, and what I realized is that in my old computer, I copied all of my documents over, but I forgot to copy my pictures.
Sure.
So years later, if I would have destroyed that computer, I don't have my pictures anymore unless there's some type of backup. So if you're listening, you might assume that your beneficiaries are on file correct with your financial institution, like your 401k or your IRA. I tell you what, in our beneficiary checklist, one of the items that we go over is to make sure you get it in writing. You want to call the financial institution. You want to ask them, what are my beneficiaries listed? If you can't see that information when you log into your account online, ask them to send that to you in writing so you ensure that it's correct. It's also very common. You could have a blended family,
Yep, absolutely.
Couples are remarried today. So those type of wishes are something that has to be unique. So, the term divided equally amongst all children born of this marriage, that's not an identifiable feature when you have a properly named beneficiary. In fact, you need to have 5 key elements for a properly named beneficiary. So I don't know if you run into this situation. I mean, you've been dealing with this with Mom to try to get things up to date. It's one of those areas, it can be confusing.
No question.
And mistakes can be costly. Not only can the money go to the wrong person, if you don't set it up correctly, the government's going to come in for a money grab on retirement accounts in the form of taxes. And then in addition to that, they're going to double whammy them with things like possible probate.
Yep.
And then you have attorney fees on top of that. And, all of a sudden, in the blink of an eye, you could have 50, 60, 65% of a retirement account wiped out because, mistakes were made with not having their proper estate planning task put together.
I've actually had that case where a couple remarried and had a child. The guy had a child from his new wife. So he had 3 kids from a previous marriage, and then he had a child from his new marriage, and he never changed the beneficiary. He ended up passing away, and all of that money went to his 3 children, not his 4th from his new wife. That was a huge, huge conflict. In fact, one of the other things I want to point out is, he comes to me, or he didn't, she comes to me and says, I need you to help me with this beneficiary payout and things like that. And for us, in the financial world, and for us with the life insurance, our responsibility, unfortunately, lies to provide the information in the accounts and provide the information to the insurance company. It's kind of the attorney's responsibility to decipher how the will was read and who's responsible for what, when, where, and how, right? And the other thing, Nolan, you and I have put together the Ultimate Estate Planning Guide, and in there is the beneficiary checklist. But there's a lot of other things that are in this planning guide that a lot of people don't think about. And I've talked about it before. When Dad passed a couple of years ago, he had the DirecTV bill was in his name only. Well, we're still 2 years later working with them trying to figure out how to get this. We have to cancel and redo. I mean, it's just a mess. If you don't have all of these things spelled out, passwords, addresses, account numbers, all of these things are in the Ultimate Estate Planning Guide that we put together. If any of you would like to get a copy of this guide, you can reach out to us. You could go on to our website and request it there, or actually give us a call at the office, and we can provide that for you. But, you definitely don't want to be put in a situation where you're planning in the 11th hour. If you prepare and plan for it now, when the last thing you want to worry about is how everything is going to be divvied up when you're suffering the traumatic loss of a loved one. I mean, that's just not the right time to do it.
Well, I want to point out one more thing for those folks that are listening and say, you know what, I have an attorney. I updated my estate plans. I've got all this stuff covered. You may not.
Right.
So as you talk about, the attorney maybe is responsible when it comes to what is called probating and is administering the estate, but there's the secondary or the beginning part of it. The beginning part of it is establishing the wills to power of attorney.
Right.
So what a will is a letter of instructions to the judge. It talks about what you want to happen with your personal items, your house, your bank accounts, maybe your rings, those type of items. But what it doesn't address is it doesn't address the issue of named beneficiaries. So if you have life insurance, an annuity, a 401k, an IRA, or a retirement account, a named beneficiary is going to supersede what your will says. There again is one more reason why I love the comprehensive approach of working hand in hand with the attorney and all of us looking at making those decisions so they all are coordinated together, because you need to match up with what your legal documents say with what your wishes are on your financial documents. So if your financial documents aren't correct, you're still could have one of those blow-ups. And that's why I'd say 90% of the time I find mistakes when I take people through the beneficiary checklist, which, as you point out, is part of the ultimate estate planning checklist. So, folks, if you'd like to get a copy of the Ultimate Estate Planning Checklist. More importantly, sit down and work through that with us. Make sure that you don't make one of those 90% of mistakes. Give our office a call. We'll set up a time to walk through that Ultimate Estate Planning Checklist and make sure that you've crossed the T's and dotted the I's, because, again, you get one shot at getting this right, and you got to get it right the first time.
If not for yourself, because not to be callous about it, you will be passed on and you won't have to suffer the consequences. Do it for your loved ones to make sure that, an already difficult time in their life doesn't have to have that compounded with uncertainty or, legal disputes or a rift in the family. This Ultimate Estate Planning Guide, this Ultimate Estate Planning Checklist can go a long way to hopefully preventing further strife. Reach out 419-794-3030 or go to the website as well, arhq.com.